Good evening, all. The title for today's episode is Your Identity. If you were to go to a meeting and you were asked to introduce yourself, what would you speak about? Would you say your name? Would you talk about your profession or position? If you were like me, you would say, I'm the wife of one and mother of two, the daughter of a king, depending on what setting it was at. This is perhaps the one-liner in most of my social media accounts. Would you, even if you don't speak about it loudly, associate yourself by what you did in the past? Something extraordinarily good, or perhaps a mistake that you're not proud of? Who you identify yourself as at most times determines your actions and words. You try to identify yourself based on what you want the other person to know about you. Something perhaps you think of as valuable and you might feel would be favorable in the eyes of the other person. Example, I am the mother of so-and-so, the prime minister of this nation. When John the Baptist got imprisoned by King Herod, his captive life weighed heavily upon him. As week after week passed in prison, bringing no change, he got discouraged, especially when his disciples questioned if Jesus was indeed the Messiah. His disciples probably wondered why Jesus did nothing to release John. To John, all this seemed a mystery. So he sent a message to Jesus asking, "Are you the one who is to come, or shall we look for another?" You can read this in Luke chapter 7. Jesus did not take offense of this question. His identity was not based on the expectation of man. His identity was affirmed in public by the Father himself when he got baptized. The affirmation of Jesus being his beloved Son. As Jesus went into the desert after his baptism, the first thing that the enemy questioned was his identity. If you are the Son of God, are you really the Son of God? The enemy tricks didn't change. He tried to instill doubt and dissatisfaction in the mind of Jesus, just as he did with Adam and Eve. Did God really say that? Would he really tell that and send you to the desert with no food? Would he really send you to prison for proclaiming the truth? This last question might have been John. He was proclaiming the coming of the Messiah. He knew that he baptized him, but he was in prison, and in his loneliness, the enemy had brought in doubt. What was Jesus' response? Jesus' answer was not one of defense, was not one of saying, "Yes, I am he." Instead, he quoted a prophecy from the scripture that John would understand. Isaiah chapter 61, verses 1 and 2. "The Lord hath anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He hath sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to them that are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord." After John's disciples left, Jesus went on further and affirmed John's identity by quoting scripture again. Isaiah 40 verse 3 this time. the voice of one crying in the wilderness, "Prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God." An affirmation to John about not just the Messiah, but that he, John, really was the voice in the desert proclaiming the coming of the Messiah. Can you imagine what John would have felt when his own identity, which was based off scripture and associated with the Messiah, was perhaps a lie? His whole life had come to this. But Jesus is reaffirming not just his own identity, but that of John. How beautiful is that? The first thing that the enemy attacks, directly or indirectly, is your identity. If you are wavering in the assurance of who you are, the enemy, uses this gap as an inroad for further doubts that give fuel to something much more. And so, let your identity first and foremost be in that of who you are in the Lord. A child of the Most High. You may not be perfect, but the Father still loves you. He gave his only Son to come down from heaven and sacrifice his love for you and me, so that we get the privilege of being called his children. If I were to look at my history, I have many things that I am not proud of. Many things that the enemy could use to shame me and condemn me and question my actions as a child of God. However, I chose to run to the Father. His arms are always open wide. My profile in Facebook and Instagram reads something like this: daughter of a king, wife of one, mother of two, loves singing, cooking, and reading. My identity is firstly in God, and then in my family or community, and then in the things that I do. The things that I do might change, but who I am does not change. Identity is not what you have done, it's who you are. I'd like to end by singing this very familiar and one of my favorite songs. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Yes, I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. God bless you. Until next time.